And hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Kotchak. I'm the founder CEO of Chemical Q Device here for Thursday, July 25th. This is 2024 for discussion 145. And this is going to cover drug synthesis and 2024 LLM inferencing, which is a very high level based on several, say, the last three reports each week. And what's shown here is basically an enantiomer. So it's non-superimposable mirror image. And to get this functionalized chiral biaryl, so it's just basically some synthetic chemistry to get the mind going in that direction. And if you talk about anything, with large language models, this is the most powerful type of generative AI out there. We're going to be talking a lot about ChatGPT. So in specific, the 4.0, ChatGPT 4.0, not only can you upload documents, images, spreadsheets, you can also download them too. Say, create this for me, and then, it usually can do the task. Now, they just came out with mini GPT 4.0, which is not going to be as good as performance, but, runs faster. And so that's the number one, right? So I've had really good success uploading documents, use it as retrieval augmented generation. And it's no code. It's basically a chat interface. And then you just attach a file with a paperclip, and then you're limited by the creativity of your prompts, and basically what you're trying to test. Now, the second one is this Grok Chat or Grok API. So they're known for speed. I think they're still the fastest across the board. So Llama models, Mistral models, I think Gemma as well too. And you can either use, right now it's still free. It's an evaluation period. And then, I think the rates are going to be very competitive with the models that they have. But typically, if you need the speed, I'll now show you with one of the examples here as far as, getting that speed with a Mixtral model. Now, the other one, NVIDIA NIM. So I've only used 50 credits and I was given 1,000. So it's still free for me. And I actually, on the day that Llama 3.1 405 billion parameter model came out, I ran my experiments, analyzed them and submitted a report by midnight. And that was Tuesday. So NVIDIA also has, and I did some other tests in a prior report with the Nematron. There are 340 Nematron 4, 340 billion parameter, which is that similar type of size as the Llama model. But anyways, they ran relatively fast considered its size, right? They're huge models that you can use using API calls with NVIDIA. Now, GPT 4.0 is a standard, and you could also compare it with 3.5 Turbo, but it's almost like it's just worse than everything. Sometimes it runs a little bit faster than GPT 4.0, but when you're using API calls with this, it's basically you have access to LangChain, and there's a lot of kind of built-in extra features with using LangChain and OpenAI. And number 5, Deep Infra. It's the only one. Pretty much I've run most of these other ones, but it should be a competitive service to the others as far as rates go. They're typically per million tokens, and they have, say, at least 10 or 15 kind of leading models on there. So these all fall under inferencing. So this is testing. So it's basically you have a specific question or prompt or query, you submit it, and then you get a generation or output or answer. And then so the model has already been pre-trained by either, Meta or some other big, OpenAI. And, we're not even dealing with fine tuning. It's the model is fixed, and then you submit a specific query, and then it outputs this, right? So basically, Hugging Chat is another one too. I do see some things with medical. I don't think it was as tolerant with medical data in regards to synthetic chemistry. And most of these should be good on chemistry, but once you start talking about very specific medical drugs and how to create these, some don't go that far. So they have Llama, Cohere, Mistral. They also have another thing called Spaces, and this is more of like the the pure LLMs, and you can also do other things on Hugging Face kind of interfaces as well. And then the other one is Ollama. So Ollama is basically they're compressed models of today's big models. So for a 70 billion Llama 3.1, you're looking at about 40 gigabytes of RAM that you'll need, and that same amount to store it. So it's an issue even on some of the best laptops. I have this is a Pro M3 how do you say this? MacBook Pro M3 Max 48 gig right here. And in theory, I should have 8 gigs for the system. But anyways, even as a compressed model, it still runs slow. So the reason why I put this kind of down, this is the top ones are based on, the ones that I'm running currently the most. But like for something like Ollama, you do now can, cut off the internet and you only access your private data. You can do uploads, with images and spreadsheets, and I have had success with documents too, or documents more in specific. So, but they're compressed models, and I haven't experienced any better experience, and I've only seen cases where, like I said, I just barely with a 48 gigs running a 40 gig Llama, 3 at that time, 70 billion parameter model, maybe not running correctly or smoothly, right? So that's just something to keep in mind when you have these huge models that everybody wants the best answers for, the best generations and the best accuracy. They take up significant space. And just as a frame of reference, even I think with a top MacBook Pro, like a 128 gigabyte SKU, that's like $7,000 laptop. And even that can't run the full Llama 3 70 billion model, because that's about 150 gigabytes download and 150 gigabytes of RAM that's needed. And, so if you're trying to do awesome stuff locally, it's going to take some very significant amount of RAM to do. And even then, how fast is it going to be? If you get down to less than a tokens a second, that's an issue too. Whereas if I do API calls with Grok or NVIDIA, they're usually at least over 10 or 15 tokens per second. And there's approximately 1.3 tokens per word, just for kind of frame of reference there. Okay, and then you have GPT-4All desktop. That would be a good starting spot if you need to run private local data. Everything's kind of baked in as far as like you just push a button and it downloads a model. So it's not going to be as configurable as other solutions. And also LLM Farm I had good luck with too. I ran it on an iPad Pro, an iPhone Pro, and then also this M3 Pro Max on the smaller models. I think mostly like a Llama 3 8 billion. And, obviously with the laptop running significantly faster than the other two, but the key is the local private use, right? So to do anything like on the awesome software, like the Llama 3.1, the 405 billion, like again, you're talking like probably terabytes of RAM. I haven't figured out the exact size of that model, but I know for the 340 billion model, you pretty much just have to run API calls because all of the awesome hardware relatively is up in the cloud. Okay. Now the last, and I had more issues with so Gemini.Google and then Claude Sonnet, and I'm pretty sure they're good with the chemistry as far as synthesis, but the other issues is basically you're going to have with medical and very specific medical things and asking it to do kind of innovative tasks in medicine that's going to have harder issue doing that. And then here is an example of what's going on. So basically, in order to go to the next step in chemical synthesis, you want to make sure you understand the first step really well. And we see this type of emergent property with something like ChatGPT 4.0 or Llama 3.1 405B currently. So just to kind of wrap our minds around this is basically imagine you have a specific piece of documentation, literature, and you want to know in specific where the large language model found it, right? So the page, and you also want to know the selection of text and also line numbers too. So it's kind of like, going down the row, how accurate can it do this? And I'll show you an example in the next one. It pretty much nailed it. Like as far as like, this is emergent properties. Most of the things that we've heard about in 2023 models and before are being addressed as far as being explainable, as far as like, okay, we have these synthetic steps. I need to go here to the next step. And how much do we understand the AI's answer when it returns the specific selection of text and word count and these types of things? So it's like 10,000, tokens or approximate words. Can it really pinpoint with high degree of accuracy at every time, like with every synthetic step is what is needed? Okay. Now keep in mind the large language model is what provides the context, meaning that it reads not just like a human, but its ability and its outcome is similar to a human, that instead of like, prior AI, besides the 2024 LLMs that we're seeing now, maybe GPT-4 and maybe some others, but pretty much, it had some context, but this is high degree of chemical knowledge being applied to my prompt or the question in order to pull information from the document while understanding everything in the document in the matter of seconds. Okay. So this is not, I have certain phrases for this, but this is not like some old thing that we're used to. And basically, when we're doing these types of things, that's the number one thing is I just gave it like between 1 and 3 documents. And even when ChatGPT 4.0 had 3 documents, its accuracy was similar to the first only having 1 document. And I wasn't telling it in specific where to find it in the documents. I was only telling based on reactants and products and solvents and these types of things. And it's just very smart advanced software. I'm not sure if they fully know this as far as these emergent properties and, focusing on like, it's like tens of thousands of tokens at a time. Now, we could typically get up to the 128K, but anyways, it worked a lot better than I was thinking. So I'm going to give you kind of like an abstract, example with this. So if you took organic chemistry 1, you know about Diels-Alder. So you have a diene, and then you have the dienophile here to create this new, 6-member carbon ring. And typically what you have is you have electron withdrawing groups and you have electron donating groups here that'll alter the characteristics of this. And it's going to be probably you're trying to build a molecular model for, some new medicine compound. Okay. So having that understanding, now we go to a chemical database that knows organic chemistry. And now we're going to switch over to SMILES, which are chemical representations. So instead of, referring everything to like the diene, whatever, like a 1,4,1,3 diene substitute with whatever compound. Now we're going to convert to SMILES and use everything with SMILES. So it's going to output a specific diene with SMILES. It's going to, a specific dienophile and a specific product that you get. So this is basically over here, we have 2 reactants and a product. And then over here, the input is going to be different. It's going to be based on SMILES of, let's say, like a current building block that is being worked on in medicinal chemistry. And then after this point, and it's really important that the previous step went well in identifying the page, the text selections, and the line numbers as far as where it got this information from. So again, the prompts that I use, I said in specific, mark the page, the document if there were more than 1 document, and then also the line numbers or typically line numbers. And this point is really important. So every step, so we get the information either from literature or this is organic syntheses is what I was using that platform. And every step has to have a high degree of accuracy because at the end you have some product and your products are a function of the previous steps and how well they're understood. So a large language model provides more context to the user. So user-specific reaction conditions, more specific user diene, these more specific things to the actual understanding of what's going on. And this is unfolding in literature now as far as using large language models to a high extent for very specific chemical reactions and as far as like what's being done, okay? Now, the first example I have here is ChatGPT just had the best answer for this specific one. And the organic syntheses I'm focusing on is called chromatography-free and chlorinated solvent-free preparation of 2,5-dibromohexane diamide, so DBHDA. Okay. And so we see the authors here too, Bauer et al. And this was just last month, I think it was a June paper, and it says by replacing carbon tetrachloride, it's CCl4, with cyclohexane during the bromination step that is part of the overall process given here in detail, we provide here a less polluting but comparably efficient synthesis of DBHDA. Okay, so it goes on and it says cyclohexane was chosen as a suitable replacement for carbon tetrachloride due to its similar build boiling point, which is huge. If you can't get rid of the solvents like Rotovap or other techniques too. It's an issue, as well as the fact that MBS, it's another brominated solvent, reactant, and succinimide are insoluble in it, while the acid and bis. Okay, so the main thing here is basically substitute cyclohexane for the carbon tetrachloride. If you've ever seen carbon tetrachloride in salt, it's insoluble, right? So CCl4, it's actually, and more so in California here, on the hazardous list. You just can't basically use it anymore. And then lots of things are being phased out with chloroform and methylene chloride too. So, and this existed back when I had my degrees, and it's I think going even further into that direction of using different types of solvents and more creative ways of doing things. So my prompt with this, so what I did is I read this specific paper, and in other parts of the report, I read two other. But in this specific one, I just gave it one paper upload, okay? And I basically said that, what solvent did the authors use to make the synthesis of DBHDA more environmentally friendly? Identify the document page number and line number that assisted your conclusion, okay? So we see up here is the selection of text. And then, so the answer here is basically the authors used cyclohexane, which is correct, to replace carbon tetrachloride, making the synthesis of DBHDA more environmentally friendly. This information is found on page 224. So we see 224, and the line numbers were approximate. They were close, but it says 7 through 16, and I just included that portion of text just because the slide size. And so this is probably the best answer out of the bunch. And this just has to happen on a continual basis, like continually saying, like, it knows the exact word position, the exact line numbers, and this is used in RAG workflows, so retrieval augmented generation. And we see the same thing. So the relevant text states, and this is the generation again, by replacing carbon tetrachloride with cyclohexane during the bromination step, that is part of the overall process. And it literally was able to take that selection of text and paste it right there as the evidence of its answer, okay? So again, we see this more and more often, especially with the 2024 models of these emergent properties that, have gotten better, right? So if this happens, like the same type of answer, for tens of, or hundreds of documents, depending on the context window mostly, then, and the size of each document as far as the number of words or tokens, then this is a very viable solution for, accessing, a much broader range of the chemical space than what's ever been done before. So again, you can check in literature too, and these same types of things are happening. I don't know if they've experienced this level of success of explainability with the page number, the line numbers, the text citation, as far as having that and supporting, that's supporting its answer that it had. So I think this is the end goal, right? There's others issues that are known with software and complex large language models. But as long as at the end of every step that it says, in specific, this is how I got this specific thing. And especially in the earlier days, like with myself, because I have to read these papers, right? And it'll transition into more kind of AI checkers, that as long as that is correct on a very consistent basis, it should go into scaling up these, drug syntheses on a much more accurate basis, with less need to have, just so much knowledge with memorizing literature. Now, the other thing, the main thing besides explainability is speed. So say if one of these organic syntheses comes out and you want to beat everybody to the punch in reading it, at that same time, you need to be using the AI tools. And like I said, in the matter of seconds, going through a document and finding exactly what you need. Now, for some time, you're probably also going to have to read the paper, but you see kind of that commensurate effect between the two is that, very specific information, getting it right away, having it explain it to you. And then on top of it, reading the paper. And I created a key for these. So I read these organic syntheses, I created a key. And then, so the last step was definitely with the running the prompts on, in this case, it's ChatGPT 4.0. So I scored this one based on the answer key that I created. I gave it a 10. I didn't give too many 10s out. And I based it on, if the answer was accurate, if the page number and line numbers, and actually I didn't ask for text citation, but it was really nice in this case that it actually gave it. So the prompts do matter. And I've seen a number of prompt templates that go off into these very abstract directions. And I tend to have the best success just keeping very specific prompts, like short, specific prompts are asking for the very thing that I'm looking for, as opposed to assuming it's a role. I think in 2024, especially the larger LLMs, that it knows that, like it's switching into chemistry mode. Just like how if I set up judges, it can know that it's a judge now. Okay, so the second one is basically this second paper here. So platinum catalyzed enantioselective diboration of monosubstituted alkenes. So you see the alkene here too, and the diboration going on. It's platinum base. So in this case, it's reactive to oxygen. So you have to do it in a glove box. A lot of these steps you can do outside of the glove box, but then you have to kind of purge and go through anti-chambers before you get to the glove box. Okay, so here's the ligand here, and then here's an example of the product. And the main thing is these 1,2 diols that you can form after this, diboration here. And, on the 1 and 2 positions, there'll be opposite stereochemistry here. So on this one, I gave it some context. And basically I said, for this specific case, I need you to be, and without telling it, I need you to be a document expert and I need you to be an industry expert. So my prompt here that I gave it is how can chiral 1,2 diols, which comes from this product here, transformations created using the author's reagent be used to in a follow-up, which wasn't, RNA was not mentioned in this paper at all. RNA synthesis pathway, what would be the total time and cost be of your proposed pathway? Okay, so this specific one, so this is the Llama 3.1 that came out this week. I asked Meta.ai to create the code so that I could do retrieval augmented generation on this specific paper. Okay, single document. And it goes, so it starts to answer your question. Now, this first part is more of a formality with the 1,2 diols and these types of things. So that process uses both the large language model and retrieval augmented generation to provide this text not in bold here. Now, the text that is in bold here is going off into the large language model's own understanding of chemistry and biochemistry and what to do with this 1,3 or 1,2 diol in RNA. Okay, so it provides this lengthy response here, with dollar amounts and these types of things. Now, the good side is the generations tend to be a lot more accurate these days, especially as the models keep getting better and bigger, and that's the trend. So the next step obviously is it's hard to go through and validate this. So short of being an RNA expert, which I wouldn't say that I am, but asking experts to verify this thing, the human portion of this will be key, especially in these early steps of getting this going, so that the AI can produce the results and then also check itself using some other form of AI that way. But what this proves is basically, it's switching these roles that it serves, not only to understand everything in this document in the matter of seconds, and then also to go off into the web, or I'm sorry, to rely on its own parameters. This model, I don't believe should have access to the web, just the document I gave it. So it's trained on 405 billion parameters, chemistry being a big chunk of that. And then this is the answer that's provided. Okay, so this all unfolded out of 3 weeks of chemical Q device reports, and then they're available in the references at the end. Now, the last one I really want to focus on is speed, right? So I had mentioned just overall in general, LLMs and LLMs plus RAG workflows, if you want to add a document and search it, is fast, right? It's a lot faster than any human can do in any amount of time. Right. So especially if I'm giving it 3 documents, and in this specific case, I'm just asking it to rely on its own intuition without a document. But just across the board, even if it's down below 20 tokens a second or 10 tokens, and probably under a token a second, like that's still, well, token a second is like, say 0.7 words per second. So even if you had a human that would say read at 0.7 words per second and fully understand everything, I think the large language model would still be overall faster, right? And humans have to take breaks. And then that would be the other thing, is that the LLM would just zip through all this. Okay. So this was a specific prompt. So this is the first of the 3 reports that I did. And I just wanted to kind of like understand the base model performance of these. So I asked this question: design a new cancer drug candidate using a goal-oriented approach, which is common, based on SAR, structure activity relationship, predict their physical properties, and provide smiles. Okay. So in this specific one, there weren't any additional documents that were uploaded. It's just solely relying on its own intuition, its own model. And like I said, in most of these cases, I don't believe it has access to the outside internet, right? These are API calls, the way they were tested. And then some of the judging I did actually through ChatGPT, and then Grok, with a Llama 370B. So we see with the Mixtral, the most tokens generated, and I actually had to abbreviate this answer or generation. And then the judge score, wasn't the best, 7.5 and 9. But the thing that sticks out is the speed. Now, the way that Mixtral works is it's called Mixture of Experts. So even if it has this 8x7, so it's approximately 56 billion parameters, somewhere along that line. Some of these things are shared between other experts. But basically, it's not using all of its parameters. It might use 2. So if it's, instead of 8x7, it's more like 2x7, which would be like 14 billion. So you'll see it's significantly faster than some of these other ones. And, Llama 370B running at 350 tokens a second that's still lightning speed by any measures. And the mixture one, almost, about doubling, almost doubling that. And again, it has to do with the architecture. So, trying to get the speed, you get the speed by not running all of your parameters. And then somehow in the ones that you are running, you're getting quality responses still. And my experience with this is obviously, compared to GPT-4o, not as good as quality. But if you think of like the number of reactions you could do in a day and just say, we just have time, like we have time. And even if we're not 100%, or even if we're not like 95% sure at every one of the steps, because, asking it to kind of like back up its own answer with AI isn't quite there yet, say you just want, to do this kind of mass exploration at a very fast rate, this might be for you. Okay, so that's what was done. And you see part of this answer too, in a lot of these things, the days of people complaining about large language models, like mass hallucinations, these types of things, I haven't experienced that as much. Like sometimes Llama would, give me an answer and it would just be like very brief. I just don't understand this. Whereas GPT-4o seemed like it might have more gas in the tank, basically. So, as far as giving some type of response, and obviously having humans read papers, create keys, and then run the generations and then assign a score based on those is a very valid approach that'll be going on for some time. So the main summary with this is LLMs are definitely faster than PhD level chemists, but the quality across many prompts needs improvements. So the first one that I showed you in specific, that one with ChatGPT 4o with an uploaded document was the best case, right? So it was able to give a good generation, meaning a good answer that specifically selected the text, and it let you know what page it was on with the line numbers. And again, I don't think everybody knows about this, that, based on the specific prompts with 2024 models and being specific, and like I said, less with the abstract, like telling GPT-4o, you're a chemical expert, it just switches into this mode. And then I proved this over, these past 3 reports, especially with like many of these different, or basically 3 sets of 10 prompts, with the first 2 being the same prompts and the last one being more specific to upload documents. And many low cost to no cost LLMs with emergent properties exist for developing new medicine today, right? So this is kind of falling under that whole kind of prompt engineering thing. And, it really does matter what you ask. And sometimes if you're way too specific, it'll get confused, even like GPT-4o. But I'd say it's just is it just include only the bare amount of information it would take in order to, fix this task or solve this answer. And then explainability matters. Some generations reveal a complete summary of their findings, like the first example I gave. And then the document, page number, selection of text, and line numbers are, they need improvement. More so with the ChatGPT 4o than my RAG setup with the Llama 3.1, this huge model, the 405 billion parameter model. Sometimes it didn't even, in specific, more so that one didn't return the actual line numbers. It kind of lost track of it. But the interconnects matter too. So I don't know exactly how ChatGPT 4o, accesses my documents and does these things efficiently over 3 documents as opposed to my specific code that I use for the Llama model. Subsequent synthetic chemistry steps improve if humans and other software have more confidence based on these current steps of explanations, right? So there's many steps in building molecules, and basically, if it's better models that come out, which will be an impact too. And then using other tools. And there's other ones that exist like ChemCrow that uses a bunch of tools, and they're very specific to like the reaction and, safety precautions and these types of things. But what I'm finding a lot, especially in the 2024 models, these newest models, is a lot of this is just starting to get baked into its parameters, right? Its corpus or its training data is extensive. There's certain types of data that it can't access or shouldn't access, and it gets into those details. And at that same time, you have a learning software, an AI software that has figured things out in an emergent way that we weren't even expecting, that it could even interact with humans in natural language processing to the high level that it is this year. Okay. Now, context matters. So LLM, retrieval augmented generations, for pulling documents, info, you have to do that, while understanding. You can't just like go line by line and try to find things unless you're typing in things like word by word. So, that's where the context comes in. And then the large language model further uses its own context to solve problems in addition to the document info, like the second example that I showed here. And speed matters too. So more synthetic chemistry reactions run in a single day with more speed. And it's a good thing to a metric to follow. And you always want backups too. So if you're top one, in generation quality, which I would say would be the ChatGPT 4o, something were to happen, then you need the backup and then a backup to that one. And, what tools can you use today in addition to, have it return this very specific, important information that we can double check. If you're giving it tens of thousands of words, we need to double check that before going to the next step. So high tokens per second is a function of model size, architecture, and hardware. So basically, a lot of times you just don't have access to anything close to what's running the Llama 3.1, the 405 billion. Nobody has that. Well, the ChatGPT 4o is proprietary, so we don't have access to that anyway. So at this stage, we're talking about synthesis and drug discovery. A lot of these things are early, right? So it's not like it's clinical, it's ready for whatever. So a lot of this is not going to really focus, I don't believe, as much on patient data and these types of concerns as far as using APIs in a secure way, just like, backing up your phone in a secure way over the internet. Okay, so more reactions per day are available, when the speed is higher. Okay, so here's the link here too. And then, so again, this has been a seminar for drug synthesis and 2024 LLM inferencing. So inferencing, again, is this endpoint where the model's fixed. We're not training, we're not updating, we're not, using massive numbers of GPUs. A lot of times it's done on CPUs, just smaller, collections of GPUs and CPUs. But there's more of inferencing because this is such a popular thing right now than there is, training a model, even that even though it just took like 16,000 GPUs for Llama, for the big model. And this has been Thursday, July 25th, 2024. My name is Kevin Kocek. I'm the founder CEO for Chemical Q Device. This has been discussion 145. Have a productive rest of the week and have a good rest of your day. Take care, everybody. Bye.